Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Continue readings from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th Canto, Chapter 19. Today's text 17. Matra svasraduhitrava na viviksa no bhavet balavan indriya gramo vidvam samapikarshati. Matra svarsha duhitrava na viviktasano bhave balavan indriya gramo vidvam samapikarshati. Matra with one's mother. Svasra with one's sister. Duhitra with one's own daughter. Va either. Na not. Avivikta asana seated closely on one seat. Bhavet one should be. Balavan very strong. Indriyagrama the group of senses. Vidvamsam the very learned in advance. Be even. Karshati agitated. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation: one should not allow oneself to sit on the same seat, even with one's own mother, sister, or daughter. The senses are so strong that even though one is very advanced in knowledge, it may be attractive. Purport: learning the etiquette of how to deal with women does not free one from sexual attraction, as specifically mentioned herewith, such attraction is possible even with one's mother, sister, or daughter. Generally, of course, one is not sexually attracted to his mother, sister, or daughter. But if one allows himself to sit very close to such a woman, one may be attracted. This is a psychological fact. It may be said that one is liable to be attracted if he is not very advanced in civilized life. However, as specifically mentioned here, vidbang sang api karshati, even if one is highly advanced materially or spiritually, he may be attracted by lusty desires. The object of attraction may even be one's mother, sister, or daughter. Therefore, one should be extremely careful in dealings with women. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was most strict in such dealings, especially after he accepted the sannyas order. Indeed, no woman could come near him to offer him respect. Again, one is warned herewith one should be extremely careful in dealings with women. A brahmachari is forbidden even to see the wife of his spiritual master if she happens to be young. The wife of the spiritual master may sometimes take service from the disciple of her husband as she would from a son. But if the wife of the spiritual master is young, a brahmachari is forbidden to render service to her. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhupya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation repeated. One should not allow oneself to sit on the same seat even with one's own mother, sister, or daughter, for the senses are so strong that even though one is very advanced in knowledge, you may be attracted by sex. Hare Krishna. Association. And we're hearing a very powerful verse. Maharaj Yayati. He's speaking from, we could say one sense realization, but he has realization of the danger, the difficulty in association with the opposite sex. Sometimes this verse is met with surprise, concern by devotees. I remember the first time we were hearing this verse with some of our newer devotees in the previous ashram, and immediately the response was, "Oh, what? Oh, come on, ew, you know? Why would that be in the Shastra? Oh, that is terrible." But the point being mentioned here, it says, "Vidbang sang api karshati." Vidbam sang. Even one who's very learned and advanced. And that's what Prabhupada mentions in the purport. It may be said one is liable to be attracted if he is not very advanced in civilized life. However, as specifically mentioned here, vidbang sang api karshati. Even if one is highly advanced, materially or spiritually, he may be attracted by lusty desires. So, the point is that it's not simply for uncivilized people, even a great and learned personality. Prabhupada says this is a psychological fact. Therefore, we find in the Vedic culture such strict regulation is there. It's given as an injunction, prescription. So, we often find ourselves in a dilemma where we have, as we mentioned yesterday, a way of life which is so pervasive in our society that is more or less completely opposed or antagonistic to rules and regulations. A lot of people come to think, why are you
separating the men and women. This is outdated. I forget the word that it is. This is archaic. Why you're following these rules like this, or in your brahmacharya ashram, why they're not mixing. But from the Vedic point of view, there's always an injunction that one should be very cautious to pursue any path that is not given by the acharyas. The essence of all spiritual knowledge is hidden in the heart of the Mahatma. What is that? Mahajano yena gatasapanta. That the main cause for downfall or deviation in spiritual life is going against that which is being given to us. So that is what Prabhupada emphasized again and again in terms of how we receive spiritual knowledge. And we can't do the ascending, aroha process, right? We have to do the descending, the shabda. And while it may go against our sensitivities or our conditioning, Prabhupada has emphasized again and again, when you take knowledge from your mother, from Vedas, then you will always be protected. So that is also mentioned here in Bhagavad Gita, we may recall. Chapter 16, text 7. Pavritim cha nivritim cha janana vidurasura nasocham na pichacharo na satyam teshu vidite. Those who are demoniac do not know what is to be done and what is not to be done. Neither cleanliness nor proper behavior nor truth is found in them. So this is the disease of the modern society. They don't know what, I like to do this. This feels good. If it feels good, it's good. Why all these rules and regulations? Why are you restricting the expression of the soul? We see this a lot in spiritual circles, that something spiritual means it feels good to me. So therefore we often face sometimes difficulty presenting our more or less strict philosophy of Krishna consciousness in certain circles, because so many rules, and I feel restricted. But this is exactly the point, that because the senses here, Balavanindriyograma, the senses are so strong, it's mentioned also in the Gita, the senses are so strong and impetuous that they forcibly drag away the mind even of man who's endeavoring to control them. So the senses are so strong that beyond our own volition we require assistance to bring them under control. And therefore that is the Vedic injunctions. So that's one point. And then as we look at the Vedic injunctions, we want to find really the essence, because there's so many varieties of Vedic scriptures and laws and recommendations, so many portions. I can honestly say without Srila Prabhupada and without ISKCON, we would be completely, the whole spiritual knowledge of India would more or less be such a jungle. Right? How could we determine that? I realized that because I was studying a lot of Hinduism before I came across Prabhupada's books. It's so confusing. It's literally like they say the banyan tree, you can't find the root. We'd say Hinduism is like that. You can't find what is the essence. So many varieties and so many, Shaktis and Shaivites and all. And anyone who approaches that field, they get completely bewildered. And the conclusion nowadays is Mayavad philosophy. That actually, although all this knowledge is there, the reality is that you don't need Shastra, you don't need scripture, you don't need a guru. It's all one. That's there. But we see, I'm so grateful we can be so appreciative of Prabhupada for reviving it's not the Hindu, but the Sanatan Dharma, the spiritual knowledge of India, without such a clear and lucid, word-for-word translation commentary. Then this great spiritual tradition may very well be lost in time. That was being seen. But now it's completely resurrected and very quickly is assuming the prominent position in terms of clearest spiritual understandings. Scholars, academics, spiritual seekers, the common people, they all, when they receive these books, they see, I can put my faith in rest assured when I read this book. We have that intuition in our heart. As soon as we come to Prabhupada or ISKCON, we see Prabhupada say, yes, I can repose my faith safely here. That's Prabhupada's authority. So as we want to look at the different Vedic injunctions and see what is the real essence actually, because, okay, I need to regulate my sense, but how should I do it? There's so many portions of the Vedas. So fortunately, the Srimad Bhagavatam, although it's so diverse and so many different angles can be drawn out and things we can focus on, Prabhupada is again and again bring us back to the essence. So the essence of all of the Vedic aphorisms is, I found a beautiful verse that I haven't learned yet, but I'll just share, which really summarizes the essence of this conclusion. Nahanistan mahachchidram samohasa cha vibhrama yan muhurtam kshanamapi vasudevam nachintayat. Even for a moment remembrance of Vasudeva is missed, that is the greatest loss, that is the greatest illusion, and that is the greatest anomaly. So why these injunctions? To help us remember Krishna. Smartavya satatam vishnur vismartavya nijaduchit sarva vidini shedasyor etayareva kinkara. The purpose of all the rules, why? To facilitate remembrance of Krishna. And when we have our enemy, the enemy is not out, the enemy is within. It's our mind, our uncontrolled mind and senses. So therefore, injunctions, which injunctions? Those which help facilitate the remembrance of Krishna. And the remembrance of the Supreme Lord is glorified throughout. The scriptures are constantly singing the glories of remembrance of Krishna. There's a few nice verses. This one is coming in I believe the third canto. Etavan Sankya Yoga Byam Swadharma Parinishtita Janma Labha Parapungsang Ante Narayana Smriti. The goal of all of our work, all our endeavor, all of our yoga, our dharma, that at that last moment we can remember Narayan, remember Krishna. That will be the success. And that's when everything becomes tested. Shrotavya dinirajendra ninam santi sahashrita apashatamatma tattvam griheshu grihamedam. Those who are not after this knowledge, those who are in the material position of life, they have many topics for hearing and chanting, O Emperor. So this is being related to Maharaj Parikshit, that unless we dedicate the power of our voice in our aural reception to the messages of Krishna, Vasudeva, Narayan, then so many other topics will take that opportunity. There's a specific quota for our absorption, for our consciousness. Unless we make that active endeavor to fill the cups of our ears, that transcendental sound, don't worry, there'll be so many more varieties, material transformations to take that place. So therefore the hearing and chanting is emphasized throughout Bhagavatam actually, that this is the primary means of purification. Srinvatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana. By hearing and chanting, Krishna becomes pleased, and that's actually how the purification happens. On our own we can't purify ourselves. The messages are so powerful, even we're not able to receive them, but Krishna sees, okay, they're making an attempt, just like a child who's learning how to walk. He can't do it, but if the father helps him. So similarly, Krishna is pleased by that effort, and therefore the mercy comes, even though we don't have such qualification. So anyway, I don't want to just act like I'm trying to recite many verses, but I was just finding so many in this Shastra that emphasize this point, and this is the benefit that Prabhupada gave us, this original Vedic texts which glorify, and the more we endeavor to focus our attention on that, then the more we can more offenselessly try to glorify Vasudeva. That is the goal, that we're doing kirtan, we're doing Shravan Kirtan, but there's still the presence of offenses, so we're not getting the real result. But any of these aspects, they can speedily grant perfection when they're done offenses. So that's what we try to do, and that requires repetition. It's a nice verse from the first canto. Nayad vichas chitupadam hader yasho jagat pavitram pragmidi akarhichit tadvasayam tirtumushanti manasa nayatra hangsa niramantu shikshaya. The words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since the all-perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there. So this is the Bhagavatam is very strong. Again, we're saying, why these verses are so heavy? Why you're saying we shouldn't even sit with this is archaic. But Krishna is the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is Krishna. It's the literary incarnation of God. Idam Bhagavatam Nama. Krishna manifests as Bhagavatam. That's where all the religious principles have taken shelter. So sometimes if you have a child and he's misbehaving, you need to strongly rebuke the child or teach them a lesson. So Bhagavatam is not shy to speak very strongly certain aspects. But specifically, we see that Shukadeva Goswami, he's not merciful to the materialist. He doesn't withhold strong comments for those who have neglected to hear about Krishna. He says, Vile Bhatrukama Vikramanye, that their tongue is like the tongue of a frog, and the ears are no better than snake holes. They don't give reception to the message of Uttama Shloka. So again, that seems very strong, very heavy, but the more one begins to access that mercy, it's like, why would anyone not? Why would anyone go anywhere else? And that's really the only way that one can get free from these strong senses. Balavan Indriya. These very strong senses, they're plundering our spiritual inheritance of our eternal identity. But the Vedic message is a reminder. It's like someone has amnesia, we've forgotten, so we're investing all our consciousness in matter. But then that sound vibration comes and reawakens us. So that is why, as we're saying, these injunctions may seem strong, but they are for the ultimate good. So we can continue a little more in the purport and go a little deeper, but see if anyone wanted to. Sometimes it's helpful to have a shorter discussion and focus in on a few points. These were a few thoughts. If no one would like to comment or question, then we can go more into the purport. Yes,
well. You're just appreciating this session of the Bhagavatam in terms of how relevant is, especially to Prabhupada emphasizes in many of the purpose through this session of the Western mentality, which is to the whole sexual, attraction is pretty much elevated, in the West. It's not that it's missing in the East, but it's like the thing in the West. Sex makes the world go round. It goes and says like that. So some of the things that are presented in the verses is a very practical and it just presents the actual truth quite nicely and strongly, as you were mentioning. The highlight of this verse is that one have to be very careful, taking into consideration the conditioning that is there. One have to be careful, be cautious about, especially when we're in the position of, either the ashram of brahmachari, vanaprastha, or sannyas. sannyas and brahmacharis, basically. Vanaprastha still is with the wife. But especially for brahmacharis and sannyasis. And sannyasis are advanced and mature, so it's very much, a great important lesson for brahmacharis. Now, question, and maybe for discussion you can comment on this. The principle is to be careful. Now, in the matter of being careful, how we can make sure that we also be very conscientious about not falling into the trap of attractions and aversions, which is, Prabhupada explains that is the same, is a different face of the same coin, but it's the same thing. It stands from the same principle, which is I want to enjoy. It's about my enjoyment. So either I reject or I accept, but it's not necessarily for the right thing. It's a diversion of that. So instead of falling into the trap of aversions, we still remain into the principle that is there too, of respect. One have to respect every woman as our mother. One have to see it like that. And mothers are to be honored and to be respected and to be worshipped. And so, to get that balance, that you have to be very careful, taking into consideration one's condition, but at the same time, we have to be extremely respectful, and we have to honor and like that. So there is that balance. It's not just like, oh my God, keep them away type of thing. We have the famous say of Srila Prabhupada, if the brahmacharis have problem with the women in the ashram, they can go to the forest. We hear that, so, if you can comment on that.
Yeah, it's important to understand the Vedic perspective. There's a quote from the Manusmriti that when women are respected and revered, then all prosperity, happiness, religiosity come. So that should, the men need to take note of that, and not, as you said, go too far outside. But at the same time, for a brahmachari, where there's a specific injunction, one should not associate. So that regard should be there. But that still doesn't mean that, okay, this is mother, so I talk very nice with my mother, so the point, the injunction is still there that, yeah, they should be seen as that way, but what, in terms of the interaction, I would say it should be practically zero. So, as a temple, in the West, we need to figure out at what we're comfortable with, what standard we want to do different. Some devotees, and certainly in India, there's a certain standard, and in some of Western centers, there's the opposite, totally different. So I think as a community, it's helpful that we get on the same ground so we know what the expectations are, and therefore we can act such as a way that we don't disturb anyone, but we're able to, whatever degree we can, try to follow that principle. So there will always be the attachment and aversion going on, but the point to regulate that means to follow carefully. As you said, that's the big thing, the danger, to be very cautious. So anyway, I'm very newer devotee. I can't actually give very much of a mature deliberation on your question. But I think maybe anything I say hopefully will do some value.
well, any one thought came to mind to add to your examining this kind of finding the balance between that the attachment and aversion going on. Well, the internal balance comes from each person performing their duty, and then the interaction is in relation to the duty, because then there's a context for the interaction, and whatever the tendency is of the mind, it gets overridden by the practical matter being attended to. And there's forward movement for both persons on this spiritual level, because the communication is within the context of service or duty being performed.
Especially after he accepted sannyas order. Indeed, no woman could come near him to offer him respect. Again, one is warned here with one should be extremely careful in dealings with women. A brahmachari is forbidden to see the wife of a spiritual master if she happens to be young. So these are nice cultural, spiritual, Vedic cultural points and how to apply them and how to understand them in a healthy way, and that is our task. So I think I'll conclude here with your blessings, appreciation, and from my side also I do just want to reiterate how much value and contribution the women in our society have. Sometimes we get a little, the men, you know, the ego acts on everyone, and reading these things from a conditioned point of view, it becomes easy to identify this or that. So we want to, on one hand, objectively try to understand the message of the Shastra and try to move in that direction. Certainly, we offer all respect to the Mataji's, the mothers, as they are to be revered. Thank you very much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.